Song Tao was the grandfather of my older sister's husband. He was a distinguished scholar, holding the prestigious title of a first-degree graduate, and received an annual stipend from the government. One day, while lying ill in bed, Mr. Song saw a messenger arrive at his door. The messenger, carrying an official-looking document and leading a horse with a white mark on its forehead, said, "You are summoned to take the examination for the second degree." Confused, Mr. Song replied, "But the examiner hasn't even arrived in town yet. How could there be an examination?" The messenger said nothing, but insisted that Mr. Song come along. Reluctantly, Mr. Song got out of bed, mounted the horse, and was taken down an unfamiliar road. Before long, he found himself on the outskirts of a magnificent city, grand enough to be a royal capital. They passed through the gates of a large administrative building, eventually arriving in a hall where high-ranking officials were seated. Mr. Song recognized none of them, except the god of war, Guan Yu. Near the entrance of the hall, there were two low tables with stools. One table was already occupied by another man, seemingly a fellow first-degree graduate. Mr. Song took his seat at the second table, where paper and a brush had been set out. Just then, a strip of paper floated down from the sky, landing in front of him. On it was written the topic of their essay, "One man, two men, with intent, without intent." Both candidates began writing their essays. Mr. Song's essay included the line, "Virtue pursued with intent deserves no reward, evil committed without intent merits no punishment." When they finished, they submitted their work to the examiners. The panel passed Mr. Song's essay around, and all praised it. Soon after, they called him forward and gave him their verdict: "There is a vacancy for the city god in Hunan province. You are the preferred candidate for the position." At that moment, the truth hit Mr. Song. He had been summoned for a supernatural examination. Deeply moved, he bowed to the examiners and tearfully said, "How could I decline such an honor? But my mother is in her 70s and has no one to care for her. I beg you to allow me to stay with her until the end of her life. After that, I will gladly take up the position." The head of the panel instructed an attendant to check the records of Mr. Song's mother. A man with a long beard brought out the register and, after searching, announced, "She has 9 years left to live." The examiners discussed the matter. Then, the god of war spoke up. "Why not appoint Mr. Zhang, the other candidate, to serve in an acting capacity for 9 years? After that, Mr. Song can assume his full role as city god." The panel agreed. The head examiner informed Mr. Song of their decision. "Normally, you would assume the post right away. However, because of your admirable filial piety, we are granting you a 9-year leave. When that time is up, you will be summoned again." After giving Mr. Zhang some advice, both men bowed and left the hall. Zhang took Mr. Song by the hand and walked him to the outskirts of the city. As they parted, Zhang, who was from Changshan, recited a farewell poem, though only these lines remain. "With wine and flowers, the spring is ever present. With neither candle nor lamp, the night is still bright." Mr. Song then mounted his horse and returned home. When he awoke, it felt like a dream, only to realize that he had been dead for 3 days. His mother, hearing a groan from inside the coffin, immediately ordered his body to be removed. Half a day later, Mr. Song had recovered enough to speak. Curious, he inquired about Zhang in Changshan and learned that a Mr. Zhang had indeed passed away on the same day Mr. Song died. 9 years later, Mr. Song's mother passed away, just as foretold. After her funeral, Mr. Song bathed, went to his room, lay down, and passed away peacefully. At that moment, his wife's parents, who lived inside the west gate of the town, saw him approaching their house. He was accompanied by a large entourage and riding a splendidly adorned horse. He entered their hall, bowed formally in farewell, and left. Not realizing he was a spirit, they hurried outside to figure out what had happened, only to receive news that Mr. Song had just died. Mr. Song had written a brief account of his experience, but sadly, it was lost during the chaos of the insurrection. I've done my best to recount the essence of the story.